For today's starting out series, I'm going to share with you one of my favorite openings from 15 years ago called the Trompowsky. And I think one of the things I really liked about the Trompowsky is it's just a very easy way to avoid the King's Indian, as after g6 you're just able to take and just really mess up their pawn structure. Like you'll notice how compared to a King's Indian, black's not really getting the usual piece activity he kind of hopes for. Like say we go g3 and we just develop the piece in a very harmonious way. You can kind of see how with the double pawns that black has here, it's very hard for him to activate his pieces and really use the bishop pair. We can play moves like b4, just expand on the queen side, develop the pieces, and it's just a very, very comfortable advantage for white, also because of the pressure from the bishop. So that's kind of the main idea of the Trompowsky, to basically not allow them to play the King's Indian, and we also have ideas of doubling their pawns with bishop takes f6 and just weakening their structure. If you're enjoying this video, do make sure to leave a like and also to consider subscribing. Meanwhile, we are going to go through more of the options that black can play here. The old main line used to be knight to e4. This is how they used to kind of play it. But nowadays, it's not really considered quite as reliable, because after c5, you're sort of able to go f3 and kind of gain back that time on the knight, where you sort of end up with a kind of slightly improved London. Moves like queen a5 with a flick in this check, so not just losing a pawn with dc5. But after d5, it's just a very pleasant space advantage for white. Like say queen b6. Bishop c1 might look a little bit weird, but what you ultimately get here is that you basically just get this nice space advantage to work with in the center, and black's extra temp, you don't really do that much to kind of help him. Like say if they go d6, we just go c4. We just kind of develop the pieces pretty naturally. Knight c3, bishop d3. This just kind of plays itself. You've got more space and you're basically just better. And that's kind of the reason why if someone does play knight e4, they're probably going to go d5 nowadays. But then you just have this improved London where the knight extra move knight e4 is not really so great for black. Like you can go bishop d3, you'll often like exchange that knight and double their pawns. Or you can even just play it like a normal London and make the point your position is just quite good as such. But either way, yeah, it's definitely an easier position to play for white in this case. Which is why nowadays just obviously people recommend things other than knight e4 against the Trompowsky. Probably the line that's the most annoying to deal with is probably the move of d5. But you do have a little bit of a choice of how you want to play against it. If you already play like the Queen's Gambit, you might like the idea of playing e3, aiming e6 with c4 to kind of transpose back into Queen's Gambit, which is actually what Nakamura recently used to beat Caruana in a Tiled Tuesday. And a move Auto was also quite successful with about a decade ago. That said, you do have to be ready for c5. They can also play it a bit more directly as such. But still, you can take on f6, and you still get a position to play like dc5, and if e6, you can play it like Carlsen, like knight f3, c4, and just kind of basically weaken their structure and go into this sort of equal position. The other approach, which I can also suggest for those who are kind of starting out in the Trompowsky, you might like to just play it very strategically with bishop f6, because the thing is you kind of know what your plan's going to be. Like you can just go c4, knight c3, and just develop the piece without really needing to think too much about it. And yeah, black's position is quite comfortable as well, but at least this will get you into the game with an easy position and a pretty clear plan to work with, as my mouse starts to go a bit crazy on me. But like this would be a fairly typical sort of position. White can try to play in the center or on the queen side, and of course black will have a good chance as well with his bishop pair. But this is how like players like Julian Hodgson, for example, one of the early experts of the Trompowsky, like to play it as white. And if gf6 again, you go like e3, c4 and get that play once more. Or even c4 immediately if you want to be a little bit creative with it. And avoid some of those c5 ideas we saw a bit earlier that were giving black some good play. But going back a little bit, if they do play a move like e6, I mean, there's a few ways you can play it. Like the lazy approach is just go for a torre with like this kind of thing. Just not really thinking too much about the moves, just getting into the middle game. And if you do want to put more pressure on the opponent, you can go e4 and, give up the bishop pair. But, you can either play knight c3 and castle long, or you can play like c3 and, go for this kind of setup. I've played both of them. Like c3 is probably my current preference, but it really is a matter of taste which one you kind of go for. Both cases you have a very nice strategic position with a bit of extra space in the center to give you a bit of dynamic potential. And finally, if they play a move like c5, again, you have a bit of a choice which way you play it. where, you know, you can play the move d5 and, you know, go for the Korchnoi Gambit, which probably isn't fitting so much for a 5-minute training, but at least, you know, it's something you might like to explore in your own time. Or if you do want something a bit more strategic, you know, you can also just take and, you know, just play it this way, where you don't sacrifice a pawn, but just go like c4, knight c3, and just kind of build up the position in a very similar way to what we saw against 2g6. And maybe you can make the argument white position is a bit easier to play, because black's structuring a little more significant than the bishop pair. At least when I played this as black, I found it really awkward to play these sorts of positions. So I think it also could be true for your opponents. But yeah, that's basically my overview of the Trompowsky. Let me know in the comments below what was your favorite move or favorite idea from this training video. And do you have any requests for the openings that you want me to cover in future videos? Let me know down below in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.